This is the passage that I chose for the chapter 3 versal. There wasn't in chapter 3 quite as much of a visually striking image, at least not to me, as there were in chapters 1 and 2 with the dove and the heads of grain. So instead of doing representational art, I chose to just do a purely calligraphic version of the names of the 12 disciples, which you can see marked out here in quite a long passage, which, as we'll cover shortly, I had to edit a bit to fit into the space that I had marked out for the versal. Just for reference, here is the 2014, the old version. You can see that the shape of the A, I didn't paint an A. Instead, I marked out the shape of the A using negative space, using the space that I did not write in. And then I just wrote the disciples' names around the shape of the A. I took a slightly different approach in this version, which again needs to be an A for again. And instead of using negative space, I wrote out an additional passage in dark ink. You can see me writing it out here, and this is going to contrast with the names of the disciples, which I will write around it. It will contrast partly because of the dark ink, and the disciples I will write in lighter ink. It will also contrast because of shape. I'm using a much curvier style called Unschel calligraphy here, and then for the names of the disciples, I'm going to use a more angular style of Roman letters, basically what we call capital letters, sort of the capital letters of Times New Roman. So that will hopefully be both a shape and a color, or at least a tone contrast. You may wonder, how did I make sure that the names of the 12 disciples will fit and not run over or fall short? Partly it was trial and error, but also I could just measure out the line length that I needed to fill in a single line, and then edit the passage so that it was the correct length. If it was too long, then I could drop some of the son ofs and brother ofs, and if that made it too short, then I could add in a son of here or there until it was the correct length. It was a slightly edited passage, but I did at least get all 12 names in. And you can see me writing in a lighter ink, a diluted ink, and then you can see a problem that I started running into, which is that the dilution wasn't consistent. So the tone of the gray ink was darker or lighter depending on the letter, so it was inconsistent. This was even more pronounced when I eventually scanned it in, and I had to do a bit of digital editing so that all the letters would be visible, but that none of them would be the same tone as the darker letters which make up the shape of the A. I did leave some of the tonal inconsistency in. I didn't flatten it all out. I do like a bit of inconsistency. And you can also see that there's a bit of size contrast as well between the names of the disciples and the phrase that makes up the calligram shaping up the A. There's all the 12 names written in. There for reference is the 2014, the old version, written with negative space, and there is the new version, written with dark calligraphy for the shape of the A and light calligraphy for the surrounding names of the 12 disciples. And hopefully it reads as an A.